Hello. I wanted to show you today, this is going to be a very long video, just so you know. There's going to be places where I try to speed it up just so you don't have to watch it all. I'm going to do everything I can to make it as short and enjoyable as possible. I wanted to make a journal specifically for our travels in the RV to national parks and things like that. I am very interested in trying to see as many of the national parks as possible. So I wanted to make a book to write down the things we do see and things like that, and to put information in about our travels. Not about the parks so much, but about our travels and things we saw. So I took an old book and used the cover off of the book. I'm going to show you how I do that. I've made pockets in the front and the back because this is my Comp Book 2020, which my Comp Book 2020 project is researching the national parks, and so that is part of this book, even though it is not really part of our travels so much. So the book that has pockets, it has lots of pages. It's blank because I'm going to put in here all of the things that we find on our travels and write about our travels. I did not put anything on these ties yet because I want to add little bits and things that I find on our travels. So what we're going to do today is make this book. And like I said, it is from an old book, and I will show you gutting the book, everything. So let's get busy. Okay, I talked about, when I was talking about my Comp Book 2020 project, I have been talking about having another journal to tuck this into, that I actually put our trips into, the parks that we see and things like that. Well, I was going to use this book right here. The problem is that I want to make a pocket where my research book, so that I have it when we're on a trip, fits in a pocket inside the book. Well, the research book is already getting kind of fat. So before I even started, I decided I needed a different book that was a little thicker so that I have room to put this book inside the other one. So this is the one book in my stash that seemed to be about the same size as this, only having a thicker spine. The problem is, the way this book is constructed, it appears to be stitched and glued together. So getting it apart is going to be one of those things where I thought you might want to watch me get it apart, because that way you know what kind of problems you might run into another time. I collect old dictionaries because I love using them in my art, so I have quite a few. If I totally kill this book, you know, it's not a big deal, but I am trying to... I have run into books like this before. It's very odd. They're not sewn in signatures the same way some are. They're signatures, and they're probably sewn to this piece, but they're also stitched across here. It's an odd binding that, and I was pulling on this side. But you can see it right in here where it's stitched. Better put the knife down before I manage to cut myself. And like I said, I don't know if I'm going to get this apart or not. It's amazing how well dictionaries are put together. And you have to be careful because you don't want to go all the way through. One of the things that you're trying to do is keep this spine intact. Now these areas right here, this is the area where the spine bends. It's a flexing point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this distance in here. I'm going to cut about 2 or 3 layers of this lovely cereal box and layer it up in here. Now the reason for 2 or 3 layers is simply because I don't have anything really heavy and I need a nice sturdy spine piece in there. So I need to decide how wide this spine is. I'll bet it's about 2 inches. It is exactly 2 inches. Is going to make it perfect in there. Reinforce all of this. Oops. Oh good, it's stuck to something. I got this in the mail the other day and it's going to work perfectly. This happens to be a Tyvek envelope and Tyvek is great. It's sturdy, it's almost impossible to tear. Let's get this sticky part off of here. What I'm going to do is just cut up the side of it. And we'll cut the bottom off. Now it's seamed up the middle. But I actually think that it will be plenty big enough if I cut it where the seam is at. Okay, so I put the inside piece of Tyvek on, and then I put the outside piece of Tyvek on, but there's one thing I didn't think to tell you before I did that, and I want to show you. The outside piece I left longer because I'm going to wrap it to the inside right here. This book was really tore up on the edges of it, so I'm just going to put a little art glitter glue on there, this one, and wrap that up and stick it down. I'm going to make sure I got glue right along the edge so that it strengthens the edge. The next step is to paint the cover, and I'm going to cover it, but at the same time I want to paint it because I don't want this to show through my cover, and I also want to make sure that what I put over the cover doesn't have this difference between the white and the red showing through, or you know, that the cover, that's existing cover, doesn't show through. So I'm just going to paint it a light shade of brown. And it will probably take 2 coats. So I'm just going to give you a rough idea, and then I'm going to go and do it off camera because I don't think you really need to watch me paint. I just am going to paint this cover just like this. Okay? And I'm going to paint the inside as well. And it's really just so that it won't show through what I'm covering the book with. Okay. I think you get the gist of the idea. I'll see you when the cover is all dry and painted. Alright. I have both sides of my book cover now covered with paint. And I really did that because the book cover was such an extreme difference between the Tyvek I put in the middle and the cover. I mean, it was red and white, and just making it all one color makes it a little bit easier to cover, make sure that it doesn't show through what I'm going to do next. So I have cut a piece of brown paper bag. Now, if you didn't have brown paper bag, you can buy craft paper in a roll, but I like to reuse the paper bags. So what I'm going to do is I have cut it, 1.5 inches or so bigger all the way around. I have not worried about perfect cuts on the edges because I intend to cover the inside after I wrap it around. So it doesn't have to be perfect at this particular point. But what I'm going to do is squash it. And this makes a lot of noise, so I will probably speed this up and take the sound out. As you can see, it took a lot of squeezing, and you have to be a little bit careful because you don't want to tear it. You have to squeeze it and then stretch it back out, and squeeze it and then stretch it back out. That creates all of these lovely looking textures. Now granted, we're going to glue it to the book and it's going to be flat, but what we're going to do first, and I recently did a book cover like this, but I tore the pieces of paper. I wanted to do this one with one solid piece of paper. And on the right side, I am taking my StazOn ink pad. You want an ink that does not bleed, so something permanent, so that as it dries, because we're going to cover this with Mod Podge. I'm just rubbing the ink pad across the top. And what that does is it picks up the ink in just on the top of the mountain peaks. And I'm not going to worry terribly about the edges because they're going to fold to the inside, and I'm going to cover them. So it just sort of distresses the whole thing. Now we're going to turn this over, and we're going to put our book cover back on it. And I'm going to sort of do the best I can to center it. And I'm going to take part of this corner off. I don't want that whole chunk of paper coming around. Although I think it would be better if it did. So I'm going to leave it. I have decided I'm going to leave it. Normally you would take it off. And the next is the messy part. And by messy part, I mean I'm going to take my Mod Podge and glue. I'm going to really cover this paper. And I do have my craft mat underneath. And I'm probably going to work at about half of it, and then I'll work on the other half after I get the book in there. But I want to just get this Mod Podge into my paper. We have some wrinkling on our cover, which I really love. That's what we want. I am just pushing it down now. We've got some nice creasing in our spine. You just really want to get it rubbed on there. Now, it's moving around because there's still some air under it. We didn't rub it down real hard. But that creates the wrinkles that we want in it. And you could use, let me think, where's it at? You could use your brayer. If it wears your hands out too much, you could use your brayer to do this. Okay. Now we need to let it dry. And because this paper is sort of stretched around this spine here and in the gutters, I don't want to dry it flat. I want to dry it where it's stretched like so. Otherwise, it might not bend as well. I mean, it usually bends pretty well, but it might not. So what I'm going to do is just stand it up just like so to dry it. But I really want it dry before I add another coat of stuff to the outside or to the inside. I really want to get it to that state where it's dry. Okay? So I'm going to just stand it up and let it get dry. And I'll be back with the next step when that happens. Alright, so we got this all wrapped around and it's on there. It has some nice texture to it, but at this stage of the game it's still paper on the outside. So what I am going to do is to simply cover this entire thing with a layer of Mod Podge. This is something simple. It's not, I don't do anything special. I just get the Mod Podge on there and then you need to let it dry. Now, right now I'm not concerning myself with the edges because I will go back and actually do the edges when I can stand the book up to let it dry. So we're just gonna Okay, so the front cover has got one layer of Mod Podge on it. I will probably get another layer on it before it's all over. I am going to Mod Podge this map inside the cover. But because I want to create a pocket in the front to hold this research book for this particular journal, and the fact that I may want to have another pocket in the back, I am going to cover the two halves of this file folder with map page as well. so that I have some nice sturdy cardboard to create those pockets out of. So I'm just gonna get busy and do that, and I will be back when I get all that mess dry. Hello everyone. I have the inside and the outside cover of my journal ready. I have pieces of file folder covered with map ready to make the pockets, and I want to sew in my signatures. Now this is going to be pretty much a blank journal for the time being. I do not want to put a lot on the pages because it's for something specific. The pocket is designed to hold my Comp Book 2020 project. So what I'm going to do right now is show you how I prepared my signatures. I'm going to end up, I've decided on 5 signatures. They're 8 sheets each, which means that's, I think, 32 pages. Yeah, 32 pages each. So that's well over 100 and I think about 150 pages. So I have this paper that is 11 by 17. Now, normally you would make the cover to fit the pages, but we used a hard book cover, so I have to make my pages fit my cover. That's just the way it's going to work. I have to fold these in half. And then they had to be trimmed, of course. Now, you want to leave some room on your cover, and I'll show you that in just a second, but it was terrible. I felt that so wasteful to trim off just this little bit, but that's what happened. Both the height and the width needed to be trimmed some because of the book cover that I chose to use. Okay, so I did that. I then rounded my corners, and I did that because I know what this book is probably going to go through, and the little square corners I thought the rounded ones might hold up better, is really the reason. So here is how my page fits in. It's got just a little space on the sides, a little space on top and bottom. And I did 5 signatures of 8 pages each. Okay? Then I have to mark my signatures. And to do that, I have this centering ruler. And I find the same measurement on both sides, just like so. And I go in and I put a dot right in the crease at the center, which is 0, and then at 2.5, and I used 4 3/4 on this one. You just want to make sure that you use the same measurements for each. Okay? Now, I did not punch my holes yet. I don't like to punch my holes in my signatures until I'm actually ready to stitch it in. But now I'm going to punch the holes. I am going to pre-punch the holes in my spine. This is a pretty heavy spine. I'm hoping my Crop-A-Dile will handle it. If not, I may have to break down and get out the Dremel and a drill bit. So let's do this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I have found that this spine is basically 2 inches deep. 2 inches. So I need to find the center of that 2 inches. You're not able to see these marks, I know, but this ruler is 2 inches wide, and I'm going to have to use something that actually marks on there. With all the signatures in it, it won't be that hard to find to cover up. I'm going to make sure it's straight. What I'm trying to do is mark the edge of the 2-inch line. And with all the layers in here, it's hard to measure. It's hard to find. Now from that line, I'm going to go in 1 inch. And I'm going to find my center. Oh, it's not 5.5. That's right, about 5.5 each. So now I'm going to mark a dot at 0, at 2.5, and at 4 3/4. 2.5 and 4 3/4. Okay. Now, I don't know if you can see those dots. Probably not. You see? Now, from those dots, I have to mark it 3/8 of an inch. And I'm going to have some pencil lines, because there's no way I can do this without it. Okay. 3/8 of an inch. I have to have 5 rows of dots. Where's my line? There we go. Okay. And I need that same lines on the other side. And I could have used my permanent marker. They're not going to be shown very well. Okay, and I sort of checked to make sure it's relatively even. You know, this is handmade. It's never going to be perfect. Okay, now, if I use a straight edge, I have to have a row of dots. Right there. Sorry if my head's in the way. By pre-punching the cover, it will be easier for me to get everything stitched in just a little tighter. There's no way I can put an awl or anything else through this cover. This is a heavy book cover, and then I have added 2 layers of Mod Podge paper into it. So now I am going to use the small punch on my Crop-A-Dile on my Big Bite, if it works. I do not know if it's going to work or not. We're going to find out. Yes, it is. Okay, let's make sure it's going to work further in because, you know, this book board is a little heavier further in. Okay, that is going to work. I am going to stop the video for right now so you don't have to listen to all this, and I'm going to get all these holes punched in this cover. I'll be right back. Okay, so this Big Bite Crocodile did a really good job. I will tell you that that was tough. If you do not have, excuse me, I apologize. If you do not have something that is pretty sturdy, you may need to use a drill bit and a drill. This was a dictionary, remember, and the dictionary had a very heavy cover on it. So it's like going through a board. This piece of book board is very heavy. So I now have 5 rows of holes and 5 holes in each spot. And they are in the same position, center, 2.5 out, and 4 3/4 out as my signatures. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my signature, and it's a wise decision to get your thread ready before you punch holes so you don't have to let it go. And never cheat yourself on thread, because if you run out of thread, you cannot add it in. Well, you can, but it's just harder on yourself if you short yourself on thread. So I usually go 1, 2, and give myself a little over a 3rd one. This is waxed nylon, by the way. I like it. It ties nice. It stays tied. It's easy to work with. It can get a little sticky if your hands get warm. I have a large-eyed needle. And so now that's prepared and ready. Then what I'm going to do is I have this very old phone book. And I wish I had a great big phone book, but I don't. So this one works. And I have this wonderful pokey tool. Now, there's all kinds of bookbinding pokey tools. This one happens to be Tonic Studio Tim Holtz one. It's just what I have. I'm going to find the center hole and poke down through there. Now, I want to push my tool all the way in so that I have a nice round hole. And I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to do the same thing. Now, I can usually hold these. If you need to clip them, use a clip of some sort, or a paper clip, or something like that. I just usually hold them. Okay. Now set your tool and your book aside. And I'm going to work from back to front. It really doesn't matter, but I have found that if you work from one side to the other, if you're putting in this many signatures, it helps. I'm going to go out from the inside of my signature into the top hole. Let's see if you can see that. Yeah, I think you can. And I'm going to pull it down leaving myself about 7, 8 inches. I'm going to come in the next hole. And all the way through my signature. And out the next one. And I'm going to go in and out just like that. Till I get to the bottom. Okay, and this last one I'm going to take right back through the outside. Now I do like to snug it up a little bit as I go. The wax linen will hold itself in place pretty well. Okay, so I have gone out through this hole. What I have to do is come back in through that one. And you want to be careful not to split your threads. Okay, at this stage of the game, I do start to pull on my thread a little. And as I go in and out, I'm careful not to sew through my threads. Okay. Now this is where I do things just a little bit differently than some, because what I am going to do, okay, you notice that this is really nice and snug. Okay, we're going to keep it nice and snug. What I am going to do is take the one from the outside. Let me see if I can show you. See, it's let's do it like this. They're just like this now. What I'm going to do is bring them up here and tie them right here. And I could bring it all the way around and tie it right there. But what I'm going to do is tie it right here at the top. Because I am going to use these threads down the road to add some certain little dangles to. So for the time being, they're just going to sit there. Okay, so I have tied in one signature. And I have my little threads tied right at the top. Now I'm going to just set that aside. Make sure my signature's all lined up. Oops, we did not make our thread. It is much easier if you get this. You don't have to lay things down. Get this ahead of time. Okay. That was a lot easier to sew in when I'm not trying to keep it in your view, and it does take a little while to sew all those signatures in. Let's put that right there. I do have all 5 of my signatures in now. Let me stand it up so you can see it. Now, it is not real full right now because I have a plan for this book, and it's going to get very full down the road. Those pages it's going to be filled up with stuff. So, the other thing is that this comp book is going to fit into this here in a pocket. So I need to create a pocket. I'm going to put a pocket on the front and a pocket in the back. I may put, I think I will put the pocket for this for this in the back. Nope, that would cause it to, yeah, I think, anyways, I'm going to make some very, they have to have a gusset in them. The pockets are going to have gussets. They're going to have to be, you know, about, let's see here, about 4 inches tall. Yeah, about 4 inches tall. We make them 4.5 inches tall. I'll have to see if that's going to fit. So the pocket's going to be about 4.5 inches tall, but it's going to have a gusset here, on the bottom, and on the back side because this is very thick. So I'm going to make the pockets out of these. These are file folder with map Mod Podged over the top of it. So my plan is, we're going to have them 4.5 inches tall, and then about 7.5 inches wide. So let's put that up there. Okay, we're going to start from the top. And I'm going to go from here. I may have to cut that tab off. Probably I am going to have to cut it off because, quite frankly, it's just going to kind of get in the way with the edge. So let's just get rid of it. Okay. And I'm just going to use my pencil and draw on the back. If I go for 4.5 inch deep pocket, okay. Then, how far across did I say it had to be? Oh dear. And I'm going to put 2 pockets. One for the comp book and one to hold stuff until I get it in there. And 7.5 inches across. Now here's the thing, I need a couple inches on each side of this thing. So I'm hoping that 7.5 to, I'm going to have just enough. So I'm going to go in 2 inches. Can't see my lines. Oh, I don't know why I didn't just use the ruler. Okay. Oh, it slipped. Now the other thing is that I need the same gusset on the bottom of this. Now normally I wouldn't have to have a gusset for the bottom, but because that comp book is real thick, I'm going to have a gusset for the bottom. So this is a beginning of our pocket. We're going to cut this bottom piece off. And now we're going to cut these little squares out because this piece, and this piece are our gussets. Okay. Now, what we need to do is we need to fold these on the line in. And so what I'm going to do is put my ruler right here. I'm going to hold my ruler and I'm going to fold it. Okay. Then I'm going to do that all the way around. This is real stiff because of the extra layer of the Mod Podge and map. Okay. Now, these edges need to meet these folds. And it's going to be hard to do without some help from a score line. So 1 inch in, I am going to score and fold. Okay. And do that all the way around. Oof, slid a little bit. Take your time. Okay. Now, this just looks like a nice big box right now. Okay. See? The thing of it is all of these folds have to be folded in half again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark 1/2 inch lines in between each one with a score. Like so. I'm just going to do that all the way around. So those 2-inch pieces have now been scored and will be folded every 1/2 inch. Sometimes it's easier to fold it. This is nice and stiff. Okay. Okay, do you see that we now have and we're going to have to take some out of these corners, obviously. I may have about an extra 1/2 inch too much. We'll find out. Okay, you see we now have this little W like that. Okay, and like I said, we're going to have to take some out of these corners. So I am going to go from about a 1/2 inch up. Let's see if I can draw that for you. Like so. This is an experiment as far as how I'm doing this. Never did it before like this, so I'm not sure exactly how much to take out. We may have to take a little more. Always err on the side of caution. It's better to take it out a little at a time than to take it out too much at once. Excuse me. Okay. Now we're going to fold up our little we still have too much here in the corner. So we're going to have to cut out some more. We're going to actually cut it where there's a corner piece that has a little bit of a hole. Okay, it's looking good. Okay. And that's what we're doing. That's what our plan is. And I think that we can lose this extra piece. I think that we really don't need it. I think that 1.5 inches would have been enough. And that all that does is add a lot of extra bulk in there. So I'm just cutting it off. Oops, I already cut that one. Don't cut the wrong ones. You should have 1.5 inches accordioned up in there. There we go. There we go. I'm much happier with that. I think that'll work perfectly. Now will our book slide into it? Okay. Looking good. So now what we need to do is we need to use some sticky tape. Let's move this out of the way for right this second so you can see what I'm doing. I always like to use sticky tape and glue. The sticky tape helps to hold everything in place while the glue dries. The glue keeps things that you're putting in your pocket from sticking to the tape. So put the sticky tape on the folded edge towards the outside. And then we burnish it down. That also helps to burnish our little folds. And now I'm going to use this art glitter glue. Gonna have to get some more. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to pinch this so that it lays flat. I'm going to put it right here at the bottom and just on the inside. Well, we need to move out. Okay, it's all right. Just stick already? Yeah. Doggone it. Okay. Now see, the pocket expands and opens, just like so that our book can go inside of it. So we're going to just push that down, close our book. Actually, I'm going to set it behind me and weight it while I work on the other pocket. Now I'm going to work on a little something for the front cover, and while I do that, I'm going to put that back underneath the weight that I have behind me. I guess this could probably go in the front as well. Probably not as well because of the little tabbies. So I'm going to weight that down a little while. While I trim up some pages. I got these things out of a travel pad of paper, and I want to put this make today an adventure, and on this road, so I am going to cut these apart. Okay. Wow, it's finished. There's a pocket in front to stick stuff. There are 5 signatures. There's a pocket in the back to stick my Comp Book 2020 project in. In case you don't know, I am studying about the national parks, and we plan on visiting as many national parks as possible. So there's that. And I'm going to use this book to write about our trips to the national parks. The Comp Book is about research on the national parks. This is going to be about our actual adventures in the park. I'm not going to do anything with these strings right now because I'm going to do that as I go along filling up this book. I'm real pleased with how it came out. I'm pleased with the pockets. That was an adventure trying to figure out how to put them in, but it worked, and that's what matters. I'm just real tickled with how it came out. So let me read you a quote from my 1001 Ways to Creativity book. I can guarantee this is going to take me a while to get edited because there must be 20 or 30 parts and it's way too long. I'll be shortening it as best I can so that you don't have to watch for 6 years. Everyone needs something to believe in. Creative people believe in the transformative power of their imagination and the imaginations of others. Did I already read you that one? I think so. We'll read another one. Nothing is more damaging to creativity than received wisdom. Now that's interesting. Okay, guys, go have fun. Make some art. Bye-bye.